You know, um, Usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this expectation of like clinical precision.
Right, yeah. It's very cut and dry.
Exactly. You break your arm, the x-ray shows that jagged white line of a fracture, and the doctor just points to the screen and says, "There it is. There is the problem."
Yeah, it's binary. It's totally visible.
And there is an inherent comfort in that visibility,
Yeah.
because if you can see the break, you can cast it. You know exactly what needs to heal.
Right.
But step into the world of human behavior, into the landscape of our own minds, and suddenly that x-ray machine is entirely useless.
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
We are navigating a diagnostic landscape that is notoriously murky.
Yeah, because the problems we face in life, the really persistent chronic ones, they aren't usually something that just happens to us in a single observable moment.
No, they're built up over time.
Right. And we all possess this gap. You, listening right now, you know the exact gap I'm talking about. That vast, just incredibly frustrating space between where you currently are in your life and where you desperately want to be.
Yeah, that gap is universal.
It really is. And the profound realization here is that when we attempt to bridge that gap, the most formidable resistance we encounter does not come from the economy or, our bosses or bad luck. The resistance comes from ourselves.
Which is a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah.
I mean, we externalize the resistance because acknowledging its true origin is often just too heavy a burden.
Oh, for sure.
When an obstacle feels that massive, that immovable, we project it outward. We call it our mountain.
Right. Like, oh, it's this thing blocking me.
Exactly. We look at a stalled career or a pattern of failed relationships or, a chronic inability to maintain a healthy lifestyle, and we point to those external circumstances as the mountain blocking our path.
Right.
But the premise we are exploring today completely shatters that illusion. The mountain is not a circumstance. The mountain is you.
Yeah. And we are leaning heavily today into the foundational concepts laid out in Brianna Weiss's incredibly challenging and illuminating book, The Mountain is You.
It's a fantastic text. Really dense, but
Uh-huh.
so good.
It is. And our mission for you on this deep dive is to guide you through what I can only really describe as a profound process of psychological excavation.
Yeah. Getting out the shovels.
Exactly. We are going to deconstruct how your irrational fears are operating as hidden drivers of self-sabotage. We're going to explore the actual physiological mechanics of mourning your past rather than just, waiting for time to magically heal you.
Right, because time alone doesn't do it.
No, it really doesn't. We will also map out the daily habits required to build true emotional resilience and finally, look at the architecture of stepping into the most powerful future version of yourself.
That's a big journey.
It is. But stepping into this material requires a fundamental shift in perspective right out of the gate. Hearing a phrase like, "you are your own biggest problem," it can trigger an immediate defensive response.
Naturally. It sounds like an accusation.
Yeah. The natural reaction is to feel a sense of inherent defectiveness. This feeling that, well, if I am the mountain, I must be fundamentally broken.
And the irony there is that the presence of the mountain hitting what feels like rock bottom in your life is actually the ultimate proof that you are functioning exactly as nature intended.
Wait, really? How does that work?
Well, we misinterpret the breakdown of our lives as a failure of our character. But if we look at the natural world, perfection is sterile. It is precisely through imperfection, through breaks and faults and, catastrophic events, that growth is initiated.
Okay, I think I see where you're going.
Consider the ecological function of a forest fire. To the untrained eye, a forest fire is purely a destructive event, right? It's a tragedy that wipes out a thriving ecosystem.
Right, but ecologically speaking, the destruction is a prerequisite for a specific type of regeneration.
Exactly.
Like certain species of pine trees, for example, have serotinous cones. They are literally sealed shut with a thick resin. Those seeds cannot be released, they cannot germinate under perfectly pleasant, sunny conditions.
They just sit there forever.
Right. It requires the catastrophic, intense heat of a forest fire to melt the resin, crack the cone open, and release the seed into soil that has just been cleared of all competing underbrush and enriched with the ash of the old forests.
Right. The fire is the catalyst for the rebirth. And the human mind operates on a strikingly similar principle. It's something akin to the psychological concept of positive disintegration.
Positive disintegration. I like that phrase.
Yeah, our self-concept, the identity, and the coping mechanisms we have relied on for years, Sometimes it just has to undergo a period of intense, painful collapse.
Which we experience as a breakdown.
Exactly. You reach a point where your old methods of distracting yourself, overworking, people-pleasing, numbing out a feeling, they simply stop working. The pain breaks through.
It feels like hitting rock bottom.
It does. But that breakdown is the tipping point that inevitably precedes a breakthrough. It's the star collapsing in on itself to generate the density required to become a supernova. The mountain forms in your life at the exact moment your conscious desires finally collide with your unconscious needs. You are forced out of your comfort zone, not because you are broken, but because your internal ecosystem is demanding a massive structural upgrade.
Okay, so to begin tearing down this mountain, we have to start by completely rethinking the materials it's made of. And that means overhauling our entire cultural understanding of self-sabotage.
Oh, absolutely. This is step one.
Because the traditional view of self-sabotage is steeped in moral judgment. We look at our own behavior, say, committing deeply to a financial savings plan, and then, I don't know, blowing half a paycheck on an impulse purchase.
Right, and we immediately attack our own character.
Yeah. We assume we lack willpower, or we have a low pain tolerance, or worse, that we possess some dark, masochistic desire to ruin our own lives. We treat self-sabotage like it's a character flaw.
Which is just a fundamental misdiagnosis of human psychology. When we pull back and look at the evolutionary biology of the brain, self-sabotage is revealed to be none of those things.
So it's not masochism.
Not at all. It is a highly intelligent, albeit maladaptive, coping mechanism. It is a strategy engineered by your subconscious mind to fulfill an unmet need or to displace an emotion that your conscious mind does not feel equipped to process.
Okay, so you're not attacking yourself.
No, you are, in a very convoluted way, attempting to save yourself.
Man, that reframing changes everything. The brain is not glitching, it is working overtime.
Exactly. It's executing a protective protocol based on outdated or misinterpreted data.
Okay, if we look at historical precedents for this, the text highlights a fascinating story about the legendary psychiatrist Carl Jung, long before he was, a pioneer of depth psychology.
Right, back when Jung was just a child in late 19th century Switzerland.
Yeah, and he was struggling profoundly in this rigid, very demanding school environment. He felt alienated, deeply unhappy, and intellectually stifled.
Right, and as a child, he lacked the agency or the vocabulary to change his situation. And then a seemingly random physical accident occurred.
What happened?
He slipped on the ground at school and struck his head. It was a painful physical blow, but in the immediate aftermath of the shock, young Jung had a fleeting, almost imperceptible thought.
What was it?
He thought, perhaps this injury means I won't have to return to school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that single, unvoiced desire was the seed. Shortly after the initial accident, Jung began to experience these debilitating, sporadic fainting spells.
Just out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere. They were entirely uncontrollable and had no ongoing organic medical cause.
So he would just spontaneously lose consciousness. To any observer, it looked like he had developed a severe medical condition that was ruining his ability to function normally.
Right. And Jung himself later analyzed this period of his life and identified it as his own self-induced neurosis.
Wait, self-induced?
Yeah, the fainting spells were not a random affliction. They were the physical manifestation of his profound unconscious desire to escape an environment that was causing him psychological agony.
Okay, that makes sense. His brain recognized a simple equation. Fainting equals removal from school.
Exactly. Because he could not articulate his social and emotional distress, and because he had no power as a child to simply withdraw from the educational system, his subconscious mind provided a solution.
That is wild.
The fainting spells served a distinct protective purpose. They granted him the escape he desperately needed without requiring him to confront the terrifying reality of his emotional suffering. He realized that a neurosis is often a substitute for legitimate suffering.
Wow. So the subconscious steps in and says, you can't handle the real problem, so I will give you a secondary problem that accomplishes your goal.
Precise.
And this mechanism scales perfectly to how we experience irrational fears as adults, right? We all harbor these highly specific, seemingly nonsensical anxieties.
Oh, we all have them.
Like a paralyzing fear of elevators, or a constant dread that someone is going to break into our home, or a sudden, overwhelming fear of flying when we've flown safely 100 times before.
And the subconscious mind is remarkably adept at handling terror by creating these safe placeholders.
Safe placeholders.
Yeah. When a legitimate fear is too threatening to your current identity or your current life structure, the brain displaces that anxiety onto an abstract, often irrational fear.
Displacement is the key word there. It's a sleight of hand.
It really is. Consider the fear of a home invasion. For the vast majority of people, the statistical likelihood of someone breaking into their house on a random Tuesday night is incredibly low.
Right. Highly unlikely.
And because it is highly unlikely to occur, it becomes a safe container for your anxiety.
Ah, I see.
Subconsciously, your brain knows you are probably not going to be attacked, so it allows you to channel all of your free-floating, unresolved dread into this scenario.
So you get to experience and express the physical sensations of terror,
Huh?
the elevated heart rate, the hypervigilance, without actually endangering your day-to-day reality or forcing yourself to make massive life changes.
Exactly. You get the release without the real-world risk.
Let's ground this in the specific example from the source material, because this blew my mind. Imagine someone who develops a severe, crippling fear of being a passenger in a car. They might spend years in cognitive behavioral therapy, specifically targeting the fear of cars. They might do exposure therapy, sitting in parked cars, taking short drives around the block, focusing entirely on the vehicle.
And they will likely hit a wall in their recovery
Why?
because the car is entirely incidental to the actual trauma. The car is merely a physical stage for a psychological drama. Think about it. Being a passenger in a moving vehicle requires a complete surrender of control.
Oh, right. Someone else is dictating the speed, the route, ultimately your safety.
Yes. So if a person harbors a deep-seated, unacknowledged terror of losing control in their broader life, perhaps they feel trapped in a passive role in their marriage or entirely at the mercy of a volatile employer.
Confronting that reality is deeply destabilizing.
Incredibly. Acknowledging that you are a passive victim in your own life requires confrontation. It requires potentially dismantling your marriage or quitting your job.
Which feels like stepping off a cliff.
Right. So instead of facing the cliff, the brain points at the car. By obsessing over the dangers of the passenger seat, the person safely expresses their profound anxiety about powerlessness without ever having to challenge their spouse or their boss.
So treating the fear of the car without treating the underlying feeling of passivity is like trying to heal a broken bone by putting a bandage over the skin. You are treating the messenger, not the wound.
Exactly. And this tendency of the brain to protect us from discomfort leads us directly to the upper limit problem.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about the upper limit problem. This is a concept popularized by psychologist Gay Hendricks, right? The text leans on it heavily.
Yes, and it explains why we sabotage ourselves, not just to avoid pain, but incredibly to avoid joy.
This is where the biology feels almost cruel. Like, we spend our entire lives chasing happiness, stability, success. We work relentlessly toward these goals. And Hendricks argues that we are fundamentally not wired to sustain them.
No, we are wired for familiarity, and familiarity is frequently uncomfortable. Every human being possesses a baseline tolerance for how much positive emotion they can experience their upper limit.
And where does that baseline come from?
It's usually set in early childhood. If you grew up in a chaotic household, your nervous system learned that chaos is the default state of existence. Therefore, chaos is associated with survival.
Okay.
So when you as an adult begin to surpass your upper limit, say you land a dream job, your finances are finally secure, and you enter a remarkably healthy, communicative relationship.
You enter uncharted territory.
Exactly.
And the primitive brain doesn't care that the territory is filled with healthy communication and financial security. It only registers that the territory is unknown. And unknown, from an evolutionary standpoint, means a potential predator could be lurking in the bushes.
Bingo. Your subconscious interprets the prolonged absence of chaos as a threat. The sudden onset of peace literally sets off alarm bells.
So what does the brain do?
The protective mechanism kicks in. You unconsciously manufacture a crisis to drag your emotional state back down to your familiar baseline.
Give me an example of what that looks like.
Well, you might pick a brutal, unnecessary fight with your partner over how the dishwasher is loaded. Or you might suddenly, quote-unquote, forget a crucial deadline at your new job.
Oh, wow.
You initiate behaviors that generate stress because your body knows exactly how to survive stress. It does not yet know how to survive peace.
Hold on. If evolution has sculpted the human brain over millions of years to be the most sophisticated biological machine on the planet, why does it rely on such a blatantly destructive glitch?
It does seem counterintuitive.
Right. Wiring us to self-destruct when we achieve safety feels like a massive biological oversight. Why hasn't natural selection weeded out the upper limit problem?
Because evolution is entirely pragmatic. It prioritizes immediate physical survival over long-term self-actualization or emotional fulfillment. The brain operates on a very simple heuristic.
Right.
Whatever you survived in the past, no matter how painful or dysfunctional, did not kill you.
So it worked.
Right. Therefore, it is categorized as a successful survival strategy. If you survived a childhood of constant anxiety, anxiety is tagged as safe. Joy, abundance, and peace are untested variables.
That makes a frustrating amount of sense.
And the subconscious is not articulate. It does not possess a nuanced vocabulary to warn you. It communicates through blunt physical sensations and compulsive behaviors.
So to decode these behaviors, we cannot rely on brute force or willpower.
No, definitely not. Willpower is a depreciating asset.
Right. You wake up with a certain amount, and by 8 p.m., after making hundreds of decisions all day, your willpower reserves are completely drained. You cannot out-willpower a survival mechanism that runs on autonomic autopilot.
You can't.
Which means the only way out is through what the source material calls psychological excavation. We have to put on the hard hat, grab a shovel, and dig beneath the surface behaviors to find the root architecture.
And the foundation of that architecture is made up of what the text defines as core commitments. This is really where the excavation begins.
Okay, so core commitments aren't the things we tell people we value. They aren't our stated goals.
No, not at all.
They are the underlying, often entirely unconscious, prime directives that govern our choices.
Yes. Inner conflict, that feeling of wanting one thing but doing another, it almost always stems from a clash between a conscious desire and an unconscious core commitment.
Okay, I'm following.
We frequently observe people engaging in deeply irrational behavior.
Mm-hmm.
But human behavior is rarely irrational once you uncover the hidden commitment it serves.
Right.
When you identify the core commitment, the seemingly destructive self-sabotage transforms into an act of profound logical loyalty to that hidden objective.
Okay, let's build out some concrete profiles of what this looks like in practice, because this is the concept that really forces you to look in the mirror.
Let's do it.
Imagine an individual whose absolute deepest, most fiercely guarded core commitment is the need to feel free.
Okay.
Perhaps they grew up in an incredibly restrictive, controlling environment, so autonomy became their ultimate survival mechanism.
Right. For a person driven by a core commitment to freedom, any situation that requires sustained obligation, long-term commitment, or deep entanglement will be subconsciously perceived as an existential threat.
An existential threat.
Yes, this person might be incredibly talented and land highly lucrative, promising jobs. But right as they're about to be promoted, right as the company expects them to take on leadership, manage a team, solidify their presence, they will inexplicably sabotage the opportunity.
So?
They might become intensely critical of the management, start showing up late, or simply quit to pursue a new passion.
So to everyone watching, it looks like a classic fear of success. It looks like they lack grit or ambition.
But internally, the promotion represented a cage. More money meant more responsibility, more eyes on them, more expectations.
So by burning the bridge and walking away, they are successfully honoring their core commitment to remain unburdened and free. The sabotage is actually a victory for the subconscious.
Exactly. Now, the commitment to be loved creates an even more insidious pattern because it often masquerades as vulnerability.
Oh, this one is tough.
If your core commitment is to ensure that you are loved and cared for, you live with a persistent underlying terror of abandonment.
Right.
To stave off this abandonment, the subconscious might engineer a personality built entirely around learned helplessness.
So they play the victim.
Not maliciously, but this person will repeatedly find themselves in situations where they need to be rescued. They might chronically mismanage their finances, constantly entangle themselves in toxic relationships that they need their friends to pull them out of, or feign incompetence at basic life skills.
They are essentially weaponizing their own vulnerability. Not necessarily with malice, like you said, but out of sheer panic.
Exactly. The panic stems from a deep-seated belief that love is conditional upon need. They believe that if they were to become fully self-sufficient, financially independent, and emotionally stable, they would no longer require the assistance of their friends and family.
And if they are no longer needed, they will be left behind.
Right. By remaining perpetually helpless, they ensure that caregivers must remain close by. The self-sabotage of their own competence guarantees the fulfillment of their core commitment to be loved.
Wow. And this desperate avoidance of competence and sustained growth ties directly into a behavioral pattern the book identifies as uprooting.
Uprooting.
Uprooting is the ultimate drug for someone avoiding deep excavation. It is the addiction to the fresh start.
It really is a masterful avoidance tactic.
Yeah.
It is the individual who changes careers every 2 years, entirely rebrands their business identity every few months, abruptly moves to new cities, or cycles rapidly through intense, short-lived romantic relationships.
Because the initial phase of any new endeavor triggers a massive dopamine rush.
Right. The thrill of the new beginning masks the underlying emptiness.
The book uses a brilliant botanical metaphor for this. People addicted to uprooting only ever enjoy the process of sprouting. They love the initial burst of green breaking through the soil, but they never actually blossom.
Because blossoming requires something much harder than sprouting.
Right. To blossom, a plant has to remain firmly rooted in the dirt. It has to endure the changing of the seasons, the harsh winds, the periods of drought, and the slow, unglamorous process of cellular growth.
If you pull yourself out of the soil every time the weather gets bad to look for a better patch of dirt, you will never develop the deep root system required to bear fruit.
That is such a powerful image. And to justify this constant uprooting, the brain relies heavily on cognitive distortions. These distortions act as the logical defense mechanisms for the self-sabotage.
Yes, one of the most prevalent is the false dichotomy, also known as either or thinking.
Right. The brain forces a complex reality into a binary choice. Like, if I don't get this specific promotion at this specific company by the time I'm 30, my entire career is a failure and I will never be successful.
Exactly. Anxiety feeds voraciously on false dichotomies. It actively suppresses your ability to see the vast spectrum of reasonable, moderate possibilities. It forces you to choose between two extreme, polarized outcomes, completely blinding you to the nuanced reality in between.
And coupled with this is the distortion of extrapolation,
Oh, extrapolation is a big one.
which is basically taking the emotional reality of the present moment and stretching it into an infinite timeline. The text brings in a quote from Ryan Holiday that serves as the perfect antidote to this. He says, "This moment is not my life. It is a moment in my life."
It's so true. When you are trapped in extrapolation, you lose that perspective entirely. If you experience a severe panic attack, extrapolation tells you, I am feeling unmanageable anxiety right now, therefore my brain is broken, I have a permanent disorder, and I will be paralyzed by this feeling for the rest of my life.
You assume the current stressor is a permanent state of being.
Right. And this creates a devastating self-fulfilling prophecy because the sheer terror of believing you will suffer forever instantly amplifies the anxiety of the present moment.
So the psychological excavation requires us to step back and observe these distortions as they happen.
Yes, in real time.
When a listener encounters that solid, seemingly impenetrable wall of resistance, when the urge to abandon the project or flee the relationship or engage in the destructive habit hits them, the default instinct is to grit their teeth and try to push through it. But brute force doesn't work. How does someone actively pause and interrogate the resistance in real time?
Well, pushing against the wall only reinforces its strength because you are treating the symptom as the enemy. The resistance, the sudden urge to run, the physical tightness in your chest is not the problem. It is merely a messenger delivering data from your subconscious.
Okay.
When you hit that wall, the excavation begins with a pause. You must stop trying to change the behavior in that exact second and instead interview the feeling.
Interview the feeling.
You ask yourself, why is my body generating this specific sensation right now? What is this sudden urge to self-sabotage trying to protect me from?
So you approach your own mind with journalistic curiosity instead of judgment.
Precisely. You ask, is there a core commitment being threatened here? What do I actually need to feel safe in this moment without compromising my long-term objective?
Right.
By aggressively interrogating the resistance, you create a critical space between the stimulus and the response. You decouple the emotional sensation from the behavioral action.
You arrive at the empowering realization that you do not have to feel brave or calm to act bravely or calmly.
Exactly. You can feel absolutely terrified, acknowledge the terror, and still logically elect to take the healthier path.
That space between stimulus and response is where the growth happens. But the text issues a massive warning here.
A very necessary warning.
Because when you successfully identify your core commitments, when you spot the cognitive distortions, and you finally stop deploying your self-sabotaging coping mechanisms, you do not immediately feel better.
No, in fact, things generally feel much, much worse.
Right. Because the self-sabotage was a dam. And when you remove the dam, all of the repressed emotions, the unacknowledged pain, and the unresolved history you were so effectively running from, it all comes rushing forward. The distraction is gone. You are left standing in the quiet, face-to-face with a past you never actually processed.
And this transition marks the most physically demanding phase of the journey. We are entering the territory of mourning and releasing the past.
Yeah.
And it is vital to understand that we are not speaking metaphorically about the past. We are speaking about the biological, physiological residency of memory.
The past isn't just a collection of ghostly narratives floating around in our consciousness. It is physically encoded into our biology.
The body is a living ledger of our emotional history. When we experience an event that overwhelms our nervous system's capacity to process it, whether that is an acute trauma or a prolonged period of chronic stress, the emotional energy of that event does not simply dissipate when the event ends.
It has to go somewhere.
It is stored within our neural pathways and our physiological tissues. Severe stress fundamentally alters the structural architecture of the brain. The amygdala, which operates as the brain's alarm system and threat detector, it becomes hypersensitized and enlarged.
So it begins to perceive danger everywhere.
Yes. But the most significant change occurs in the hippocampus.
And the hippocampus is the brain's librarian. It's the region responsible for taking a memory, processing the emotional weight of it, and filing it away on a chronological timeline. It stamps the memory with a date and says, this happened 10 years ago, it is over.
Right. But under the sustained presence of cortisol, the primary stress hormone, the cells in the hippocampus can actually begin to atrophy. The structure shrinks and loses volume. Because it loses volume, it loses its filing capacity.
It can no longer apply the timestamp.
Exactly. So when you encounter a trigger in your present environment, a tone of voice, a specific smell, a look of rejection, the hyperactive amygdala sounds the alarm.
But the compromised hippocampus cannot effectively step in and provide context.
Right. It cannot signal to the body, this is just an echo of an old memory. Without that chronological context, your nervous system perceives the past threat as a present imminent danger.
So your body reacts as if the trauma is happening right now, in this exact room.
Yes. The prefrontal cortex, the seat of logic and rational thought, is essentially bypassed. This is why you cannot simply logic your way out of a visceral trauma response.
Which completely indicts the way modern society handles grief and trauma. We operate under this collective illusion of moving on.
Oh, completely.
The societal timeline for processing a life-altering event is shockingly brief. You experience a devastating breakup, the sudden loss of a career, or the death of a loved one, and society grants you, what, a handful of bereavement days?
3 days, maybe a week if you're lucky.
Right. People bring casseroles for a week, you get some sympathetic text messages, and then the unspoken expectation is that you must resume compliance and productivity.
We equate distance with healing. We believe that if we change the external variables, the internal reality will naturally follow.
Which is just not true.
You can completely redesign your life. You can move to a different continent, change your name, embark on a totally new career path, and surround yourself with entirely new people. You can construct an external reality that looks fundamentally different from your past. But that younger, traumatized version of yourself, the one whose hippocampus never fully processed the event, they still reside in your nervous system.
I look at this like dealing with black mold in a house. Society tells you to just put a fresh coat of paint over it. You go to the store, you buy the most expensive, vibrant paint available, and you cover the walls. For a few weeks, the room looks beautiful. The external scenery has changed.
But the structure is still sick.
Right. The structural wood underneath that paint is still damp, still rotting. And eventually, inevitably, the dark spores of the mold are going to bleed right back through that expensive new paint. You cannot outdecorate structural rot.
That analogy perfectly captures the futility of geographical or external cures for internal wounds. To treat the mold, you have to tear down the drywall and expose the rot to the air.
Which is terrifying.
It is. The tech provides a very specific, actionable psychological visualization for achieving this exposure and releasing these trapped memories. But the first rule of this exercise completely defies our usual approach to problem solving.
What's the rule?
You cannot use force. You cannot demand that your brain let go of the past.
Why not?
Because the mind operates on the principle of paradoxical intent. The classic thought experiment proves it. If I instruct you right now, with absolute authority, do not think of a white elephant, what is the only image dominating your mind?
A giant white elephant.
Right. The brain cannot process a negative command without first conceptualizing the subject of the command. As long as you are aggressively commanding yourself to let go of a memory or a person, you are actively focusing all of your cognitive energy on your attachment to them.
The resistance ensures the persistence of the memory.
Exactly. So, rather than forcing an eviction, the text suggests a targeted visualization technique. You must intentionally re-enter the psychological space where the original trauma or discomfort was born.
Okay, walk us through that.
You find a quiet space, close your eyes, locate the specific, uncomfortable physical sensation in your body, the tightness in the throat, the knot in the stomach, and use that sensation as a tether to pull you back into the root memory.
That sounds absolutely terrifying. You are essentially volunteering to walk back into the burning building.
You are re-entering the fire, yes, but the crucial difference is that you are no longer the helpless victim of the fire.
Okay.
You visualize your current, older, more resilient self, the one who actually survived the event, walking into that specific memory. You observe the environment, you look at your younger, terrified, overwhelmed self, you pull up a chair right next to them. You intervene in the memory.
You become the intervening adult that you desperately needed but didn't have at the time.
Exactly. You step in and superimpose a narrative of safety over the narrative of terror. You speak directly to that younger version of yourself. You give them the specific tactical instructions they lacked. You tell them who to walk away from, what boundaries to set, what not to internalize.
Wow.
You validate the profound unfairness and pain of what they are experiencing. But most importantly, you assure them with the absolute unshakable authority of someone who has already lived the future that they're going to survive it.
You look them in the eye and guarantee that their worst fears do not come true because you are the living proof sitting right in front of them.
Yes. You are hacking the neuroplasticity of your own brain. You are giving the hippocampus the chronological closure it was denied in the moment. You are finally stamping the file and saying, this is over.
But, I mean, I can hear a skeptic listening to this and raising a red flag. We're constantly warned by self-help gurus and therapists about the dangers of rumination.
True.
We are told to stay present, focus on the now. Isn't intentionally going back into your mind to have a deep conversation with a 10-year-old version of yourself the literal definition of dwelling in the past? Doesn't this signal a dangerous desire to regress?
It is a common misinterpretation, but there is a profound neurological difference between purposeful visualization and rumination.
Okay, what's the difference?
Rumination is passive and involuntary. It is a thought loop that spins wildly in your mind without ever seeking or reaching a resolution. It is the brain desperately trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces.
Right.
When you are stuck ruminating on a past event, it is not because you have a pathological desire to return to that pain. It is an indicator that the event impacted your nervous system far more deeply than your conscious mind allowed you to admit.
So it's a symptom.
Yes.
Yeah.
The aftershocks are still causing tremors in your daily life. Your younger self does not want to go back. They are simply demanding that the severity of their experience be validated. They need a witness.
And you become the witness.
Exactly. Once you provide that validation through the visualization exercise, the missing puzzle piece snaps into place and the involuntary loop finally closes.
Closing that loop fundamentally alters our relationship with regret. We usually carry regret like a physical weight, like a constant punishment for our past stupidity or cowardice. But the deep dive completely flips the utility of regret.
It does. We view regret as a punitive emotion, a tool the brain uses to torture us for our failures. But psychological data consistently shows that human beings rarely experience deep, lasting regret over the mistakes they made while trying.
Really?
Yeah. We regret the actions we omitted. We regret the risks we refused to take, the hard conversations we avoided, the boundaries we failed to establish, and the love we withheld out of fear.
So regret is not a warden punishing you. It's a teacher correcting your posture.
It is a highly specific, personalized compass. Regret is not designed to make you feel worthless because you didn't live up to an expectation. It is designed to create enough emotional discomfort to motivate you to change your behavior going forward.
Okay, so if you are haunted by the regret that you didn't spend your 20s traveling and exploring the world...
Right. That regret is not a life sentence declaring your youth wasted. It is a blinking neon sign from your subconscious, highlighting a suppressed core value. It is telling you exploration is vital to your soul. You ignored it then, you must prioritize it now.
Regret isolates the exact variables you must change in the present to ensure you do not die feeling unfulfilled.
Precisely.
All right, so let's map where we are. We have done the heady excavation, we have identified the hidden commitments, we have walked back into the fire to mourn and validate the past, and we have cleared out the foundational black mold.
You've done a lot of work.
But the reality is, life does not stop. Tomorrow morning, you are going to encounter a new stressor, A new conflict at work, a new financial panic, a new micro-trauma.
Inevitably.
Right. To ensure that the internal ecosystem remains healthy, to prevent the debris from silently accumulating and building a brand new mountain, we require a system of daily maintenance. We need to look at the daily habits that build sustainable emotional resilience.
And building that resilience requires a mechanical understanding of how emotions physically move through the body. The text provides an incredibly visceral metaphor for this process.
Yeah.
It asks us to conceptualize feelings as water flowing through a complex network of ducts and pipes within the physical body.
And your thoughts, your cognitive framing, dictate the condition of those pipes.
Yes, the cognitive environment determines whether the pipes are clean and open or blocked with debris.
Yeah.
Now consider what happens when you encounter a sudden, deeply uncomfortable emotion, a surge of professional humiliation, a sharp pang of grief, or an overwhelming wave of anxiety.
Right.
Our immediate social conditioned instinct is to reach for the valve and slam it shut to stop the uncomfortable water from flowing.
We suppress it. We say, I am at the office, I am in a meeting, I do not have the time or the bandwidth to feel this right now. Click. The valve is closed.
But closing the valve does not annihilate the water. The emotion has already been biochemically generated. The adrenaline and cortisol are already in your bloodstream.
So where does it go?
By shutting the valve, you have simply trapped the water inside a closed system. And when you continuously pump new emotional experiences into a closed, pressurized pipe network, the structural integrity begins to fail.
I see.
The pressurized emotional water starts causing systemic damage, inflammation, chronic fatigue, muscle tension. Eventually, inevitably, the pressure exceeds the capacity of the pipe and it bursts. That catastrophic failure is what we recognize as an emotional breakdown.
Wow. So a breakdown is not a malfunction. A breakdown is the body's emergency pressure release valve. It is the body saying, if I do not force this valve open right now, the entire system will collapse.
Exactly.
So when we fall to the floor and sob uncontrollably, we're actually experiencing a form of positive disintegration. The suppressed feelings are finally receiving the physical validation they required.
Yes.
But I mean, relying on catastrophic systemic failure is an incredibly destructive and exhausting way to navigate life. We have to learn the crucial distinction between emotional suppression, which guarantees the burst pipe, and emotional control.
This is where the text integrates a profound concept from Buddhist philosophy regarding mastering the mind. In Western culture, when we hear the phrase controlling your emotions, we imagine a white-knuckled grip. We imagine stoicism, keeping a stiff upper lip, forcing the mind into submission.
We think of a dam holding back the river.
But the Buddhist approach to mind control is entirely antithetical to force. It is rooted in the practice of non-attachment. True emotional control is the act of surrendering to the mind's output without identifying with it.
How does that look in practice?
You sit placidly, like a rock in a stream, and you allow the thoughts and the feelings to rise up, to take shape, and to wash over you and pass away naturally. You do not try to stop the feeling from existing, you regulate your reaction to its existence.
You let the water flow through the open pipe, knowing it will eventually drain. But translating ancient monastic philosophy into the reality of modern daily life requires tactical habits. How do we practice non-attachment when we are overwhelmed with deadlines and responsibilities?
Well, the text outlines several actionable physical routines to keep the pipes clear. The first is a practice called junk journaling.
Junk journaling, I love that name.
It's highly effective because it deliberately removes the intimidating pressure of traditional self-reflection. When people think of journaling, they often envision writing a cohesive, profound memoir.
Right, like it needs to be published.
Exactly. But junk journaling is simply the act of opening the valve for a few minutes a day and letting the water spill out. You take a blank piece of paper and you write down every fragmented, ugly, irrational, anxious thought in your head.
No filter.
No filter. You do not edit it. You do not judge it. You do not try to formulate a solution to the problems you're writing about. The sole objective is the physical externalization of the internal pressure.
It's moving the energy from your brain, down your arm, and onto the paper. Another incredibly direct physical habit is the breath scan, which operates very differently from standard deep breathing exercises.
Yes, a standard deep breath is usually focused on relaxation. A breath scan is an investigative tool. You engage in a cycle of slow, continuous respiration, breathing deeply in and out, but critically, without allowing any pause or break at the top or bottom of the breath. You create a seamless circle of air.
Okay.
As you maintain this continuous flow, you scan your physical body, paying acute attention to where the breath seems to catch or hit a snag. You will inevitably notice a specific location, a tightness in the diaphragm, a sharp tension between the shoulder blades, a constriction in the throat where the breath does not flow smoothly.
And what does that snag mean?
That snag is the physical locus where your body is storing unresolved emotional tension. It is a somatic marker. Once you identify the location, you direct your mental focus there and visualize what specific fear or memory is anchoring that tension.
You pinpoint the physical blockage in the pipe. And then the text offers the most universally accessible advice of all, the ultimate release mechanism. Sweat, move, cry.
You must physically process the biochemistry of the emotion. The stress cycle must be completed. This requires moving the body, engaging in an intense workout, practicing yoga, going for a long walk, or, crucially, allowing yourself to cry.
Yeah, crying is huge.
Our culture has aggressively pathologized crying. We view tears as a symptom of weakness, a failure to maintain our armor. But the text vehemently argues that the ability to cry freely and completely is one of the most profound indicators of robust emotional strength. It is the body's most efficient mechanism for flushing out stress hormones.
Crying means the plumbing is functioning perfectly. But let's pause here and address the reality of the listener's daily life, because the concept of letting the water flow freely sounds beautiful in a controlled environment, but it collides violently with reality.
That's true.
A listener might be thinking, I cannot simply burst into tears at my desk in the middle of a high-stakes Tuesday morning staff meeting because I did a breath scan and realized I have unresolved grief about my childhood. If I do that, I'm not achieving enlightenment, I'm getting fired. We have to function in a professional society.
And that is a vital, necessary distinction. Developing emotional intelligence does not mean becoming a slave to every emotional impulse in public spaces. The text absolutely supports the utility of compartmentalization.
Oh, really?
Yes, turning off the water valve, temporarily suppressing the emotion to get through the presentation, or the commute, or the difficult conversation, is a necessary, healthy, functional adult skill. You have to be able to pause the process.
Okay, good.
Provided, and this is the foundational caveat upon which the entire system rests, provided you have established a designated safe routine to open that valve later.
The suppression is only toxic if it becomes permanent. You can close the valve at the office as long as you open it when you cross the threshold of your home.
Exactly. You delay the processing, but you do not cancel it. You get home, you put on your running shoes, you do your junk journaling, or you let the tears fall in the shower. You are still processing the emotion in real time, just on a slight, tactically chosen delay, rather than packing it away in the pipes for a decade.
And integrating these habits requires immense patience because we are fighting the brain's innate desire for homeostasis.
The homeostatic impulse is the brain's regulatory system. It governs your mental self-concept in the exact same manner it regulates your core physical body temperature.
Oh, interesting.
If you attempt to overhaul your entire life overnight, if you wake up Monday and try to implement 2 hours of meditation, an intense workout regimen, and a completely new dietary protocol, you will shock the system.
Right.
The subconscious will register this massive deviation from the baseline as an existential threat. It will pull the emergency brake, flood you with fatigue or anxiety, and force a rapid retreat back to your familiar, dysfunctional comfort zone.
So how do we make changes that stick?
Change must be implemented incrementally. It must consist of micro-habits that sneak past the brain's threat detection radar.
So let's look at the architecture of the journey we've built. We have excavated the deep-seated needs driving the sabotage. We have sat with our past and mourned it. We have installed a functional plumbing system of daily habits to process the micro-traumas of daily life.
The pipes are clear.
Right. The listener is finally stepping out of the exhausting, hypervigilant state of survival mode. This leads us to the final and, paradoxically, the most complex phase of the journey, embracing the future and stepping into the role of the most powerful self. You would assume this is where the music swells and the path gets easy.
You would think so.
But transitioning from a lifetime of surviving to a state of actually thriving introduces a completely unique set of psychological hurdles.
It is the ultimate paradox of healing. If you have spent the majority of your life operating in survival mode, if your baseline calibration is set to manage chaos, navigate crises, and extinguish fires, then the sudden onset of peace is going to feel deeply unnatural and intensely threatening.
Peace feels suspicious. It feels like the quiet before an ambush.
Because your nervous system has been permanently mobilized for war. When you finally achieve the exact things you have been striving for, a quiet, uneventful weekend, a deeply secure and loving relationship, stable finances, Your biology does not know how to adapt to the lack of cortisol.
Wow.
The absence of a threat creates a void. In that void, people frequently experience an overwhelming irrational sense of guilt, or they unconsciously initiate destructive behaviors to balance out the unfamiliar relaxation. They will provoke a conflict or engage in reckless spending because their brain is desperately craving the familiar rhythm of chaos.
This transitional phase is where we have to critically reevaluate a piece of advice that is woven into almost every self-help narrative. Trust your gut. We are constantly told that our gut instinct is an infallible psychic oracle that always knows the truth. But when your nervous system is miscalibrated, trusting your gut can be incredibly dangerous.
It is one of the most pervasive and risky misconceptions in popular psychology. Now, to be clear, there's profound biological validity to the concept of a gut feeling.
Right, the gut-brain connection.
Yes. The gastrointestinal system is lined with millions of neurons, the enteric nervous system, and it is heavily connected to the brain via the vagus nerve. Your physical body is constantly absorbing and reacting to subtle environmental cues far faster than your conscious analytical mind can process them.
The body is keeping score in real time. But, and this is the crucial distinction, feelings do not predict the future.
Exactly. Feelings are not premonitions. They do not possess a crystal ball. They are highly accurate, real-time reflections of your current internal thoughts and past conditioning, not a forecast of your destiny.
Okay, that is huge.
If you carry a deeply ingrained, unhealed terror of intimacy, your gut will scream at you to flee the moment you enter a genuinely healthy, committed relationship. That physical sensation of panic is not your gut magically predicting that this specific person is going to betray you. It is your gut accurately reflecting your current, unprocessed fear of vulnerability.
So you cannot afford to blindly obey every visceral impulse. We must learn to separate instinct from feeling. Let's define that separation clearly. What is the fundamental difference?
An emotion, a feeling, is a somatic reflection of a thought. It is the physical weight of anxiety or joy. Instinct, on the other hand, is not primarily a feeling. Instinct is a sudden, decisive action.
Interesting.
Instinct is the autonomous reflex that causes you to violently jerk your hand away from a burning stove before your brain even registers the pain. Instinct is the quiet, undeniable pull that moves you toward your creative work or a new path, even when your emotional state is riddled with resistance and fear.
So trusting your gut means honoring your genuine instincts. It does not mean assuming every anxious flutter in your stomach is a legitimate warning of impending doom.
Precisely.
That distinction is incredibly liberating. It means we don't have to be held hostage by our own anxiety. So if we can no longer rely on our miscalibrated emotional responses to map out our future, how do we establish a new, true north? This brings us to what is arguably the most powerful conceptual exercise in the source material, the conscious meeting of your highest potential future self.
It serves as the evolutionary counterpart to the inner child work we discussed earlier. Instead of traveling backward into the past to provide comfort, you travel forward into the future to receive instruction.
How does someone do that?
You find a quiet environment. You utilize meditation or breath work to lower your heart rate and shift out of the sympathetic nervous system, and you actively visualize the most evolved, powerful, fully realized version of yourself arriving from the future to sit with you in the present.
And the power of this exercise lies in the granular details. You don't just imagine a vague concept of success. You observe them meticulously. What are the specific clothes they are wearing? How is their posture? What is the cadence of their voice? What does the expression on their face tell you about the life they lead? You are engaging in the reverse engineering of your own becoming.
You are creating a concrete avatar of your potential. And the critical mechanism of this visualization is the deliberate transfer of authority. You visualize this future self physically handing you the tools required to reach them. They might hand you the keys to a specific type of home or a notebook outlining their exact morning routine. You mentally appoint this future iteration of yourself as the CEO, the absolute editor-in-chief of your current life.
It is a psychological corporate handover. You aren't just sitting on a cushion indulging in a pleasant daydream. You are literally asking the CEO of You Incorporated to hand down the standard operating procedures for your daily existence.
Yes.
You are asking, if I am destined to become you, what exact choices would you make with this random Tuesday? How would you handle this conflict with my boss? Would you eat this meal? Would you send this text?
And adopting that CEO mentality demands a radical level of total accountability. Mental strength at its core is the willingness to take absolute, unyielding responsibility for every single outcome in your life that falls within the sphere of your control.
It requires abandoning the narrative that you are a helpless cog in a cosmic wheel.
Exactly. While you cannot control external events, you must recognize that the overarching trajectory of your life is the direct cumulative result of your personal actions, your behavioral patterns, and your daily choices.
It is a heavy realization, but ultimately it is profoundly empowering. Because it means that when we are failing to thrive, when we feel stuck in the mud, it is rarely because the universe has singled us out for punishment.
No.
It isn't because we are cursed or inherently defective or unworthy of joy. It is usually simply because we are biologically unaccustomed to peace. We just need to relentlessly practice holding the joy, holding the stability, until it overwrites the old programming and becomes our new, familiar baseline.
And through that daily incremental practice, the imposing mountain in front of you begins to lose its altitude.
It really does. It becomes manageable terrain. So let's take a step back and survey the massive internal landscape we've traversed today. If you have been listening, you have completely deconstructed the nature of the obstacle in your path. We've discovered that the mountain of self-sabotage you've been cursing is not an enemy. It is an incredibly intelligent, albeit misguided, bodyguard.
Yes, a bodyguard.
It is a disguised need built from the architecture of your past. We've learned that you cannot bomb the mountain. You have to excavate it by uncovering your hidden core commitments. You have to find the courage to walk back into the fire, pull up a chair next to your traumatized younger self, and provide the definitive closure and validation they never received.
Properly mourning the past so you're no longer condemned to repeat it.
We have mapped out the mechanical reality of emotional plumbing, how to utilize the daily practices of junk journaling and somatic breath scans to keep the pipes clear of pressurized debris, allowing you to fluidly respond to life's challenges rather than blindly reacting to triggers.
And finally, we explored how to fire the anxiety that has been dictating your choices and officially hand the keys over to the CEO, your highest, most realized future self.
And as we conclude this deep dive, I want to leave you with a reminder that I found to be one of the most freeing concepts in the text. Nobody is watching your climb the way you fear they are.
Oh, that is so important.
We all suffer from the spotlight effect. We think our failures and our struggles are being broadcasted. But those people from your past, the ones you imagine are judging your missteps, they are entirely consumed by the massive, intimidating terrain of their own mountains.
They're reading their own stories.
Exactly. This closure, this difficult excavation, this growth, it is entirely, 100%, a game of you versus you.
That realization strips away the performative aspect of healing. It is the ultimate act of liberation. The text leaves us with a final, incredibly provocative reflection to carry forward. The mountain standing in front of you is not a cosmic accident. It is not placed there to destroy you. It is the specific calling of your life. It is your unique purpose, finally made visible. Someday, if you do the work, this mountain will be behind you. But the person you are forced to become in the grueling process of climbing it, the resilience, the agility, the profound self-awareness you forge on the ascent, that person will stay with you forever. In the end, the ultimate revelation is that it is not the mountain that you must master, but yourself.
It's all muddy waters when you're standing in the middle of it, but the mud is just dirt and water suspended in chaos. And when you finally allow it to settle, when you stop fighting the current and simply observe the flow, the water runs perfectly clear. And suddenly you can see the solid ground underneath, and you know exactly where you need to step next.